Should the United States secure its southern border? Should we keep our people safe from threats in the South? You know, to me, that seems like a really odd question. Why would anyone ask whether we should? But yet we're forced into that situation here because it's not. As is graphically shown on virtually every TV show almost every day, there is a tremendous problem at the border and has been for many years. Now it's been thrust into the spotlight right now because there's a lot of issues in Congress right now tying the issue of additional funding for Ukraine with the border issue. Now, as we've talked about in recent deep dives, and we're going to talk about it in more detail later on in another segment, is about this situation of why is the Congress actually trying to tie those two together, and why are they unwilling to let the border issue go in order for Ukraine funding? We'll talk about that another day, but let's focus on what the Congress is actually focused on right now, because it genuinely is a really big problem. And that is significant insecurity at the border. And there's literally tens of thousands of people. And as one of our reports here in a minute is going to show you, up to 12,000 in a day have been crossing over the United States. Actually, more than that. That's how many I believe were actually captured temporarily, at least. But why is the border unsecure? Why are we even asking the question? It's almost like saying, you have a really bad crime problem in Detroit or Baltimore, St. Louis, even lots of violent crime on the rise there. DC here, even in my backyard, we see a lot of that here. It's like saying there's a big problem and the police are going to say, we can't do anything about it. The government's going to say, we're not going to do anything about it. We have a small police force and that's just going to be good enough. Well, nobody accepts that. And to even say, should people be safe is absurd. The only question is, how can we make people safer? That's really the only topic of conversation when you're talking about the cities within America. It's an ongoing thing that people put a lot of resources and a lot of effort into. Bipartisan. There's nobody in Baltimore or Chicago or these other places that say we shouldn't protect our people. Yet, on our southern border, that is a question. People do say that. They say, should we or should we not? And lots of people on both sides actually say, both the right and the left, yes, we should protect our southern border. We should have immigration reform. Let's take a look a little bit at the track record. Here's what President Biden said just 3 months into office.
For more than 30 years, politicians have talked about immigration reform, and we've done nothing about it. It's time to fix it. On day one of my presidency, I kept my commitment and sent a comprehensive immigration bill to the United States Congress. If you believe we need to secure the border, pass it, because it has a lot of money for high-tech border security.
Okay, so that's what he said about 2.5 years ago. 2 days ago, his spokesman at the National Security Council, John Kirby, added this.
So since it's so critical, what can the president do on border security to get the Republican votes he needs?
Well, again, I won't negotiate here in public, but I'll tell you from day one, he submitted a proposal for immigration reform. We're serious about it. We're willing to have a good faith negotiation with the Republican side over this, but they're simply not willing to do that. They just want to saddle up this supplemental funding, lard it up here with border proposals that are simply unacceptable to the president and the administration.
So he lays out the Democratic position. Yeah, we've got proposals. We've got things that we can do, but those darn Republicans, they're just not willing to play ball. I mean, they keep trying to do all this other stuff, and they're actually not serious about it. That's kind of a common theme in there. On the other side of the ball, you have a different claim, equally saying this could be done simply if only fill in the blank. Here's how one of the Republicans does fill in the blank.
In the southern border across the United States, we had 12,000 apprehensions yesterday, Neil. That is an all-time high. We've got a crisis in Arizona. It's absolutely unsustainable. People pouring into our country. You and I have talked about this before. The fentanyl pouring into our communities, killing our kids. Texas, we've spent $12.5 billion to deal with the border crisis. This is all something that could be addressed almost immediately. Jay Johnson, when he was the Secretary of Homeland Security under President Obama, he just simply said 1,000 a day was a crisis. We're talking about 12,000 yesterday, Neil. So all we're saying as Republicans is, shouldn't we put the southern border of the United States, the sovereignty of America, the safety of Americans first, rather than throwing another $60 billion to Ukraine before we've done our job to keep Americans safe here at home?
Now, you see both sides say that this could be solved easily if only the other side would do something differently. But here's the thing. They haven't done it. Neither one of them have done it. This is an ongoing thing. It's been that way for decades, actually. And look, Americans are fed up with this. Large numbers of Americans are fed up with this. Gary, if you could actually bring up that the screen there so I can show what this latest poll was. There was one on, I believe it was the Pew Research Center there. Americans remain critical of government's handling of the situation at the U.S.-Mexico border. And then in the details, you see that just 23% of Americans say that the government is doing a good job of dealing with large number of people seeking asylum at the border, while more than 3 times 73% say it's doing a bad job at the border. Now, my first question is who are these 23% of the people that think the government's doing a good job? With all of that, Gary, if you can roll some of that B-roll there we have of recent shots at the border, when you see this kind of stuff almost every day, and when you see what the Texas congressman there correctly said was an all-time record apprehensions at the border of 12,000 a day. And by the way, just clarify, that's how many were apprehended, not how many crossed illegally. That probably was a staggeringly higher number. And then things just keep going on. But you see that the Republicans are saying it's the Democrats' fault. The Democrats are saying it's the Republicans' fault. Here's the thing, though. In 2021, when Biden made that statement in April 2021, I think it was, they had the White House, they had the House of Representatives, and they had the U.S. Senate. They did nothing to solve it. In backing up a little bit before that, you had President Trump in 2017. He had the House, he had the Senate, and the Republicans had, of course, the White House. They got nothing done. Republicans have been saying this is a big issue all the time. They couldn't even get a border wall issue done because both sides then squabble among themselves when they actually have the lead. But the bottom line is nothing gets done. They don't get anything accomplished when they have the numbers. Now, how successful do you think that anybody's going to be when you have divided government right now on an emotional issue like the Ukraine issue? It's very clear that both sides are using the Ukraine issue as leverage to get their preferred ways done on this border issue. And there's two separate issues at play here, by the way. You have immigration reform and you have border security. Let's take a look at those in order. First of all, immigration reform. That's a very convoluted and complex situation that has a lot of people with different views on what should be done. And it's changed a lot over American history. There's been many times where we had just very liberal policies. Lots of people could come in, and then we constricted it quite a bit. There was even a period of time where there was no legal immigration, and then they opened it back up to whatever. Times change, the circumstances change, so policies change as well. This is a thorny question because without question, the immigration system is broken and has been for a long time by all accounts. But there is such a difference of opinion between the right and the left on how to solve that problem and how to reform it. Everybody agrees it needs to be done. There's just a big disagreement on how it needs to be done. That's not anything I can sit here and say, well, look, here's what they ought to do. I can give you my opinion, but there's plenty of other people that have equally valid opinions that are very different. So that one's going to be a lot harder nut to crack. What is not a harder nut to crack, however, is the second part of that, which is the border security. No matter what the laws are, no matter what we want to do in the future, whatever kind of reform we want, let that continue to play its course. And it can take time because it's something that's going to tie Americans to something for a long period of time. So that we need to try to get it as good as we can, as best we can for the American people going forward, and making sure that it's in America's interest, to the best that we can. In all the things that are done with that. No matter what that looks like at the end of the day, though, no matter what that looks like right now with the system being broken, we must keep the border secure. It is a fact. It is true. It's not spin that there's all kinds of people crossing into this country illegally all the time that are not people we want in this country. I mean, we've seen lots of people from China, from Russia, from the Middle East, from South America, all different kinds of countries. And people have all these different reasons to come in. Now, I know many people who have immigrated to the United States from literally every one of those countries and places I just mentioned here. And the vast majority of those are high quality people who want to escape tyranny from where they're from. They want a better life for their children, and good on them for doing that. And the people that I know went through the hard process of coming through over to it. It took some years actually to get into the country. And all the ones I know anyway are good citizens, productive, and our country benefits because of that. Awesome. That's cool. That's not the case with everybody. I think we'd be fooling ourselves if we try to believe that all these people who have crossed into our country illegally without any kind of documentation, we don't even know who a lot of them are or what they're wanting to do. Now, it doesn't take much imagination to recognize that we have a lot of adversaries in the world. There's a lot of people that don't like us. And you can imagine that they would take advantage of that opportunity to get some of their people into the country and to slide folks into our society, so that in the event that maybe if war breaks out somewhere else, they're in a position to do something, or maybe even have some nefarious intent in the meantime. I don't know that. I don't know for sure. I can't point to them, or we'd go get them. But what we can do is to say, stop the squabbling among the Republicans and the Democrats. Get the border protected while you figure out what the right policies are to how many people we should let in from what countries, to what extent, over what period of time, what the processing are. Figure all that out later. I don't care, but make sure that whatever the law is, and that means what the law is today, right now, get the border secure. Now, you have some issues with using the military, maybe this with the Posse Comitatus Act, and that the U.S. active duty forces can't be used for domestic policing. That can stand, but there's some disputes on how you determine it. Should you send the U.S. military down there in a policing form, or is it a national security issue? Ergo, what the military is made for. That's a question that can be answered, but there's certainly room for discussion on that. National security or National Guard troops from the various countries, they can go to the border, and especially in Texas, they are and have been for a while. But there's probably not enough of them. That's a pretty expensive operation there. But it's something that at least they're trying to do something. And who knows whether they should expand that, whether we should put more federal border patrol agents down there, whether we should go with an actual wall or other kinds of technology to try to monitor the situation, and then enough agents to go get them, more National Guard troops, federal forces operating within the constraints of the law. Do we find out what's authorized, et cetera? I don't know. There's a lot of things that are possible. And all it takes, folks, is the will to do it. All you have to do is say, okay, we're going to disentangle border security and immigration reform. And everybody on both sides of the line claims that they want to have our country safe. That should be non-negotiable. There shouldn't be any question about whether we should keep our country safe when we have the means to do so. So let's focus, first of all, on doing what everybody claims they agree with, getting the border safe. And then you can go on with the harder work of finding out what the immigration policies ought to be. And those are very valid concerns. But right now, folks, we don't know who all's coming into our country. We don't have tabs on them. We have a big issue with lots of undocumented workers, and the number keeps growing all the time. And that's another issue, because we don't know where people are. Those things need to be fixed. But folks, the number one thing we should do right now is get our border secure, whatever it takes. I don't want to hear any more excuses from politicians and claiming this or that, and then telling me that we really care about the border security, but then they don't take the action. When the action is available, this is not that hard to do. It truly isn't. And if you saw actions in them trying to do something and then it wasn't working, then fine, let's have some nuance. Let's fix whatever's not working. But first, we got to see the action. Let's just put all this aside, work on immigration, get the border secured, folks. Let's get it done today. Thank you very much for this short episode here, but this is a big issue here, and I think something we need to get fixed, and we need to get it fixed right now. That's all we have for you on Deep Dive today. Remember, sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode of Deep Dive.